Well, I think things are about to get ugly again for Iran. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I know, good to see you too. All right, now can it? Got to get started. We're going to start off the show with some Iran updates with retired Navy Captain Dave Kurtz on The James Show. And it seems like the Straits of Hormuz had gotten quiet for a little bit over the weekend. There was a flare up yesterday. I was under the impression it was got quiet again. Had another flare up today. Is this ceasefire going to hold, Captain? Well, I mean, what could happen? I just get the impression we're going to go back to bombing the snot out of them. So you're a retired Navy captain. How easy is it to deal with the mosquito fleet of boats that is harassing people in the Straits of Hormuz? Well, you're a retired Navy captain. If you're in a active battle zone like this and you see a boat coming up to you, can you just blow it out of the water, or what are the procedures you have to go through before you can blow it out of the water? So is there the possibility that we could diminish Iran's ability to do the mosquito swarms, or is that just there's too many small boats left out there, and that's something you'll never really truly get rid of? How long you think they can hold out? Well, I was never in the military, but I've read a lot in history where blockades have been used in a ton of wars. You know, like Carthage blockade in Sicily. And there always seems to be the ability for someone to slip the blockade. You can get a note out to the outside world, or you can get some goods through, or you can get to the walls of Constantinople. In 2026, is it possible that a small boat or someone can get through our blockade? Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much. It's good to have you on the show. This is retired Navy Captain David Kurtz. I appreciate your expertise, and thanks for being on the James Show, sir. Appreciate your time. All right. Marco Rubio is speaking. He just stepped out to the podium, and your Secretary of State is giving an update on Iran.
the global economy hostage. So far, as a proof of concept and as a proof of function, 2 U.S. flag merchant ships have successfully transferred the Strait of Hormuz in the first stages of this project, and they're now safely on their way. The U.S. military is deploying the necessary assets to extend this defensive umbrella over commercial shipping. But there should be no mistake. And as I said this already, this is a defensive operation. I want to reiterate that point. This is important to understand. If no shots are fired at these ships and no shots are fired at us, we're not firing shots. But if we're fired on, we will respond, and we will respond with lethal efficiency. The assets supporting this project, by the way, include guided missile destroyers, over 100 land and sea-based aircraft, multi-domain unmanned platforms, and 15,000 of the finest military service members on the planet. These forces have already destroyed, as I told you earlier, I thought it was 6, it's 7 Iranian fast boats that failed to heed our warnings. And by fast boats, we're talking about, some of these things look like Boston whalers. Okay, so these are not like Navy ships. But nonetheless, they come fast at these boats, try to swarm them, try to harm them. We're not going to let that happen. So 7 of them now sit at the bottom of the sea, along with, by the way, the rest of Iran's Navy. That's where you can find their Navy today. And we're going to continue to systematically clear this passageway through the straits to restore freedom of navigation. Now, while this project steadily progresses, Operation Economic Fury, continues to impose maximum pressure on the Iranian regime and what remains of their already frail economy. Today, inflation in Iran is 70%, and their currency is in total and complete freefall. U.S. sanctions enforcement is stepping up. It's moving in lockstep with the naval blockade to degrade Iran's capacity to generate, to move, and repatriate revenue. It directly targets the regime's primary revenue lifelines. The blockade alone is costing Iran as much as $500 million a day in lost revenue. 90% of total Iranian trade has been halted, causing permanent damage to Iran's oil infrastructure as wells are forced to shut in. Again, all of this is in response to their piracy. Okay, it cannot be that you have these straits and they blow up any ship that moves and the only ships that get to go through are theirs. You can't have a situation in which the straits are closed to everyone else, but they benefit from the piracy. That can't happen. That's why the blockade is in place, and that's why these sanctions are crippling them. Any foreign financial, and by the way, Treasury is now identifying and cutting off every dollar of revenue that's flowing to this regime. And so, look, any foreign financial institution or commercial actor that enables Iran's sanctions evasion is going to face secondary sanctions exposure and a loss of access to the U.S. financial system. As President Trump has said, and the facts clearly bear out, the United States of America holds all the cards. There is no scenario here in which if they decide to join a ladder of escalation, they wind up getting the last say. But our preference is for these straits to be opened to the way they're supposed to be open, back to the way it was. Anyone can use it, no mines in the water, nobody paying tolls. That's what we have to get back to, and that's the goal here. Every day the conflict continues, however, our leverage on Iran will continue to increase, and their position will continue to weaken, especially as the blockade really begins to bite in conjunction with the sanctions. So, look, the time's come for Iran to make a sensible choice. And it's not easy for them to do that, obviously, because they have a fracture in their own leadership system. And apart from that, I mean, the top people in that government are, to say the least, they're insane in the brain. And so we need to address that, and it's difficult because it's hard to get past that in their system. But it's important for them to make a sensible choice and the one that's right for their people. The president, our president, has proven time and again that his preference is peace. But Iran must accept the reality of this situation and come to the negotiation table and accept terms that are good for them but ultimately good for the world. The diplomatic path, if there's a real diplomatic path, I'm not sure it's going to be one, but if there's a real diplomatic path and we continue to explore it, Steve and Jared are working on that very hard. If there is one there, it could be one that leads them to reconstruction, to prosperity, and to stability, and to not posing a threat to the world. The alternative is growing isolation, economic collapse, and ultimately total defeat. I know what the right choice is for Iran. I hope that the people over there making decisions will make the right one. The last point I would make, and it really is important for them to understand this, is they really shouldn't test the will of the United States, at least not under President Donald Trump. He has proven time and again that he will back up what he says. And if they test him, ultimately they will lose. The hard way, the easy way, the long way, the short way, they will lose. And with that, it's time for your questions. So, Catherine, why don't we start with you first?
Catherine Herridge, I'm an independent journalist. Secretary.
All right, so there's Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, we're going to take a break when we get back. We'll let you hear some of the question and answer session with the reporters at the White House. I'm James Parker. You're listening to The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
Nuclear weapons program. For example, they innovate and try to innovate long-range delivery missiles that now, in some cases, are capable of reaching much of Europe. They build these large underground centrifuges for enrichment activity. There are countries in the world that are involved in the enrichment business, but these guys do it in mountains and in caves and in hiding. They've always had secret components of their nuclear program undisclosed to the world, and we know for a fact that they retain highly enriched uranium at 60%, that they did so, and that has no civilian use, none, zero whatsoever. So they have an opportunity here to agree to something that will make it clear that they're not interested in. One thing is to say we don't want a nuclear weapon. Another thing is to do the things that prove you don't want a nuclear weapon. By the way, if what Iran wants is a civilian nuclear program for power plants and stuff like that, there are a lot of countries in the world that have that, and they don't enrich. They import the enriched material. You know, they could have that if that's what they wanted, but they're not acting like that's what they wanted. They're acting like they want a military, nuclear program. That's unacceptable. So that's the process we're engaged in now. To create, that's the object of this diplomacy, is to come up with some level of understanding about what are the topics that they've agreed to negotiate on. We don't have to have the actual agreement written out, and one day this is highly complex and highly technical. But we have to have a diplomatic solution that is very clear about the topics that they are willing to negotiate on and the extent and the concessions they're willing to make at the front end in order to make those talks worthwhile. That's what Stephen Jarrett and the whole team is working on, and I hope to have good news on it. That's the outcome we would prefer. That's the outcome we would have preferred a year ago. That's the outcome I think most of us would have preferred a long time ago. But that's not the option they've given us given their activity. All right, there's no way I can figure out who to call on. I'm just going to press right in the middle, right there, you right there, yeah. In the back row.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll go to you next. All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio.
Keep going right.
Welcome to the White House.
What's that?
Talking to me, sir?
Yeah, to you, yes, sir.
Thank you. I have two questions on two separate issues that come
Do they
under...
get two questions for these?
Two questions.
There's a lot of people in here.
That fall under your umbrella.
All right, well, you can ask me two questions. I'll give you one answer. Go
Thank you very much.
And I'll pick the one I like better.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The first has to do with the blockade. There are lawmakers from both parties who claim the blockade is an act of war. What do you say to that? And my second question has to do with the fuel embargo of Cuba. How long, Mr. Secretary, will that last?
Okay, two things. All right, good. I'll answer both your questions because I like the second one too. First one on the blockade. And so why do we have a blockade? We have a blockade because they shut down the straits. Answer.
Questions.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary Rubio.
Keep going right.
Welcome to the White House.
And a loss of access. One that leads them to reconstruction, to hard way, the easy way up. And that's because they've always said that. They just don't have secret components. There are a lot of countries in the world that have that, and they don't enrich to negotiate on. We don't have to have the actual agreement on, and I hope...
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll go to you next.
Issues that come
Do they
under...
get two questions for these?
Two questions.
There's a lot of people in here.
That fall under your umbrella.
All right, well, you can ask me two questions. I'll give you one answer. Go
Thank you very much.
And I'll pick the one I like better.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio is taking questions from the press about Iran right now. We'll go right back to that press conference. He came out, he gave an opening statement. You just heard that in the last segment. Now he's taking questions from reporters. And I want to play you the second question he was asked thus far, because this is sort of a legal, nerdy, tit for tat discussion to be had here. But there is a legit debate. The War Powers Act says he has 60 days to do whatever he wants before he can get congressional approval. He says he doesn't have to worry about that anymore because hostilities are over. But the counter to that is, doesn't a blockade count as an act of war and therefore would trigger the War Powers Act?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The first has to do with the blockade. There are lawmakers from both parties who claim the blockade is an act of war. What do you say to that? And my second question has to do with the fuel embargo of Cuba. How long, Mr. Secretary, will that last?
Okay, two things. All right, good. I'll answer both your questions because I like the second one too. The first one on the blockade. And so why do we have a blockade? We have a blockade because they shut down the straits. So I don't know which members of Congress you're talking to, but here's what I would ask them. I would ask everybody here. It's very simple. These guys have shut down the Straits of Hormuz. This is what Iran is saying. We will shut down the straits. No one can go through. No country in the world can go through unless we allow you to go through, and you have to pay us. But our ships can go through, meaning the Iranian ships, as much as they want. That's crazy. Who would agree to that? So how are we going to have a situation where they get to close the straits to everybody, and the only people who are allowed to go through there 100% without paying anything are the Iranians? If you do that, they'll keep the straits closed forever. They're trying to make this some new normal. Okay, under no circumstances can we ever allow them to normalize the fact that they get to blow up commercial ships and put mines in the water. So the response to that is, we're going to blockade your ships. If everyone's ships are not getting out, your ships are not getting out either. That's not an act of war. That's a defensive measure. It's a counter to what they have decided to do. You know what is an act of war? Putting mines in the water. Why don't the members of Congress, whoever it is complaining about it, they should be all over that. These guys put mines in the water. That alone, mining in the water is illegal, period, under any circumstances, and they've done it. This is crazy stuff, but this is what they've done. On Cuba, oil blockade on Cuba. There's no oil blockade on Cuba per se. Here's what's happening with Cuba, okay? Cuba used to get free oil from Venezuela. Used to give them a bunch of free oil. They would take like 60% of that oil and resell it for cash. It wouldn't even go to benefit the people. So the only blockade that's happened is the Cubans have decided, the Venezuelans have decided, we're not giving you free oil anymore. And you can only imagine nowadays, the way oil prices are, no one's giving away free oil.
All right, that is Secretary of State Marco Rubio answering questions from reporters. We'll continue with this coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Breaking news. Jacob Horner, death penalty. That quick. Did I say that wrong? Anyway, his name's Tanner, right? I said the wrong name. Damn it. I should have looked it up. But the big story that has been followed by, man, TV news has really been all over this. And Tanner Horner, every step of the case, you got updated on. Not on this show. I'm not really into courtroom TV. I'm not a very good Nancy Grace here. But this is a trial that has gone on for, it feels like weeks, over a month maybe. But the FedEx delivery driver, Tanner Horner, has been found guilty of the murder of a beautiful young 7-year-old Athena Strand, and just got death penalty. So good news there. I mean, kind of good news. It's justice. It's not going to bring the little girl back. I was listening to the questions coming from the press to your Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, on the break there. And he went on to talk about how in Cuba, there's not really a blockade going on. They've offered to send more humanitarian aid to Cuba because what they have right now is a failed state and not enough resources, and people are suffering. But what Marco Rubio said, that we're not going to hand off any aid to the government of Cuba. We offered to give the humanitarian aid resources through the Catholic Church, and they, since they already have, of course, a foothold in Cuba, could be the distribution arm of that aid. Cuban government said, no, you can't do that. And so that's the impasse there. It seemed to spar the next question where Marco Rubio was asked about, hey, you going to arm some of these peoples, these uprisings? So, kind of speed this whole thing up. We arm the Ukrainians. We arm the rebels in the desert in Syria when they were fighting against ISIS. You've armed the Kurds before. Are you arming anybody in Iran? And why not? Because that's kind of a good question.
Is expressing, and I think has repeatedly, is he wished the Iranian people had, look, he's heartbroken by these images. You think about it, you're an Iranian, okay? You're unhappy that your economy doesn't work for you. You don't have freedom. You don't have an opportunity to express yourself. You've got friends that have been shot in the head because they're out protesting. And it's heartbreaking to him to see that these people are abused in this way and have no measures to take against their own government as a result of it. By the way, this goes back, if you guys remember the protests in 2009 where they slaughtered people in the street. This is a vicious regime, guys. Okay? These are people that hang people from cranes in the town square so everyone can see. They continue these executions of people and have continue to do so for over a decade and a half now. And so I think what the president is expressing is the desire that he wishes the Iranian people had an ability to fight back against some of these things that are happening to them. And I would view that as distinct and separate from the specifics of this operation that was ongoing before it concluded, and certainly different from the operation that's going on now.
All right. And let me play a couple clips from Pete Hegseth yesterday, because Pete Hegseth is also, he weighed in on the War Powers Act debate that's going on. I don't want to call it a controversy, but there is a debate to be had. It feels like there's a little gray area here. It's been more than 60 days since the conflict started. Now, Congress hasn't stepped up and put a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the situation, but are we in violation of the War Powers Act? Pete Hegseth yesterday.
The administration be seeking congressional approval for any further military operations if the ceasefire breaks down.
Our view is the one you described, that ultimately with the ceasefire, the clock stops. If it were to restart, that would be the president's decision. That option is always there, and Iran knows that, and that's why their choices in Project Freedom are important. The president retains the opportunity and the capabilities, more capabilities than we had at the start of this, to restart major combat operations if necessary. If Iran is not willing to follow through on its side of the bargain or make a deal, then the War Department is postured, locked, loaded, and ready to go. We hope it doesn't have to go in that direction, but Admiral Cooper and our forces are in a three-point stance and ready to go. Yeah,
it doesn't sound like they're backing down a little bit, but what's to stop them? And the disappointing part about this is that Congress, if you want to stop them, vote on it. And if you don't have the votes, then shut up. But they're not going to shut up. Everything this guy does is bad. I've got it. Orange man, bad. Thank you very much. Can we come up with another complaint, please? But meanwhile, we have the Iran war is still a war. We just have a funky experience on what war has been. You know, for all of human history, war was even more common than it is now. You go back and you read, like, it seems like, especially in the Roman Republic days, every 2, 3, 4 years maybe, you'd have to go get your armor off of the mantle above the fireplace and strap it on and get your sword and go march out to somewhere to fight somebody. The Etruscans, the Samnites, the Latins, there was always somebody. And war was like a face-to-face, get blood on you experience for most men. In my entire life, war has been something I saw on TV that hasn't even though we've been in many wars, none of it's touched our shores. The only people that experience war are the poor guys that we slap camo on and send them to the other side of the planet. But we haven't really experienced war on our homeland, on our own soil, in our lifetimes. And that goes for you. That goes for your grandparents. I mean, when was the last time we actually had a war on American soil? And I mean, for real, I understand Pearl Harbor was a thing, but that's just one bombing, one time. Almost the exception that proves the rule. You got to go back to what? The Spanish-American War? You got to go back to like Teddy Roosevelt? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. But just because it doesn't feel like war doesn't mean these constitutional powers do not apply somewhere and in some form or fashion. I just don't think we can quite nail that one down just yet. All right, coming up next on The James Show, a judge in D.C. was apologetic toward the guy who just tried to kill the president last weekend. You'll hear that next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. Well, I got another juicy little soundbite from Marco Rubio. He's taking questions from reporters, and he is just winging it. He has no idea who he's calling on. He doesn't know their name. It's just kind of refreshing to see after 4 years of Biden and Kamala not talking to anyone unless it was 100% scripted. And, this is still a mostly hostile press corps. But I found a good question here. I thought, this is interesting. You would want to hear this. He was asked about Cuba, and some reporter, I shouldn't be shocked, but it is kind of shocking when they're actually good at their job, just observed the world around him and asked a very good question. Now, because I'm just used to bad faith reporters trying to take whatever worst angle they can get with whatever loaded gotcha question that could be used to be pulled out of context and create some sort of sensational headline. But no, this guy noticed a little piece of evidence that is Cuba next? Like, how soon is this Cuba thing going to go down?
Daily Mail. I was curious about your meeting with Southcom earlier. There was a picture, a map of Cuba behind you. What did you discuss with Southcom about Cuba? And do you have any updates on?
I'm not going to tell you what I discussed with Southcom.
but it had to do something with Cuba.
No,
what
Cuba and Southcom. It's
Fair
the
enough.
closest part. And so the second point, I was there. Our ambassadors were in from the whole Western Hemisphere. I was addressing them, meeting the general who just took command of Southcom. And there happened to be a map of Cuba. And I said, it'd be good if we took a picture in front of that map because it's like the closest thing in Southcom to the United States. So there it is. We have maps of other countries, huh?
What about Greenland? Any update on Greenland?
No, they didn't have that map there.
What about Greenland? They didn't have that map there. So a little bit of fun, but serious question. Make no mistake, Cuba's next. How many more pieces of evidence do we need? All right, that's your Secretary of State answering questions from reporters. Did you hear about this judge that apologized to the attempted assassin of your president last weekend? Sorry about the rough conditions you're under. Fox News with the report here.
Sandra, good afternoon to you. Judge Zia Faraqui apologized to suspect Cole Allen for the treatment he's received so far while he's been behind bars. He's been put on suicide watch by the Department of Corrections, and the judge was asking why. But the judge very concerned about his constitutional rights, saying the defendant has requested a Bible, has requested meetings with his legal team, and that has not been allowed. He's been put in restrictive 24-hour lockup with no windows in a padded room without an opportunity to get out for recreation. And so the judge making it clear to the Department of Corrections that he wants answers by tomorrow morning about exactly what the housing determination will be made for the suspect in this case, out of grave concern about his constitutional rights, and that apology issued near the end of the hearing. And so quite a moment just moments ago in federal court. Bottom line, the Department of Corrections said they wanted to make sure that he survived, that this is a high-profile case, and all involved acknowledged it is a high-profile case. But again, the judge concerned about the treatment he's gotten since he was arrested after the White House Correspondents' Dinner shooting incident.
That is a trash human being right there. Are you serious? I don't know this judge personally. What do you want to bet? That she didn't offer any similar apologies to January 6th political prisoners who were put in solitary confinement under harsh conditions, didn't get to see the sun. God forbid we try to keep this guy alive, seeing as how one of the Trump assassins got killed on the spot. This other guy, Ruth, no one knows anything about him. Isn't it weird, the lack of journalistic curiosity on the Trump assassin that survived? Remember the Ruth guy in Florida that tried to shoot Trump at the golf course? Have you seen one interview with him? Have you seen one interview with his family? His mom, an ex-girlfriend, a college roommate? Where's the follow-up on that? Meanwhile, we're still dealing with David Hogg from the Parkland school shooting 2019-ish? When was that? Like almost a decade ago. He was just on CNN like 2 weeks ago. So yeah, sorry about the harsh conditions. All he tried to do was murder a sitting president. He doesn't deserve all this rough treatment. But it's the same mentality. This is the suicidal empathy to where you feel so bad for some of these people. But if they're bad people, You can't turn that off. You can't turn it off. Look, if it was the harsh conditions of like a kid who had been separated from his parents and, one of these illegal immigrant tearing apart families, that's somehow acceptable because this is an involuntary child who was put in this situation by some criminal parents, and it's just a bad situation. He has to be put in detention somewhere. But this is a guy who doesn't deserve anything nice. And what are we trying to do? Keep him alive? Yeah, we want to keep him alive. We want to know what's going through his head. We want there to be a trial. We don't want him to take the easy way out. We don't want him to suicide himself. But look at this judge. Sorry about your tough conditions. This is more sympathy than they give the straight white Christian man. Have they ever said anything that nice about us? When they do the surveys or they do the roundtables on CNN, it's like, how do we do better with white men? Say one nice thing about us. Say one positive. Treat us halfway as nice as you treat an attempted assassin. That would be a good start. You wonder why only 25% of us vote for you. This is why. We see how you treat other people. You see how you treat us. You treat January 6 people who didn't do anything violent, who went through an unlocked door, waving at cops, took some pictures, turned around, walked out. No violence, no property destruction. They didn't even knock over the velvet ropes in Statuary Hall. And they all had the book thrown at them. And a guy who literally tried to murder the president gets sympathy. Man, how bad do you hate me? How bad do you hate us? How bad do you hate your political opponents? Don't answer that. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, body cams are now considered racist. You'll hear details on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Do you know body cams are racist now? Of course they are. Of course we are. This is a trip. Now, body cams are something that were bandied about by the very people that are calling them racist now. So it is super interesting to go back and let's put all this narrative here in context. Because the people that were pushing for body cams a few years ago, it was part of the Black Lives Matter grift. And the body cam issue really came to the top of the mountain after Michael Brown. That was the hands up, don't shoot hoax. Because Michael Brown did not say hands up, don't shoot. Michael Brown, the story was that he had his hands up and he was complying with the officer and he was on his knees. And he said, hands up, don't shoot. And the evil, white, racist, bloodthirsty, murderous cop supposedly executed him in the street like it was a communist firing squad. Over a dozen people said that they saw and heard Michael Brown say, hands up, don't shoot. Now that we've been through the trial, now that we've been through all the riots, now that we've had billions of dollars of property damage and businesses burned and people dying, and we come to find out that that's not true. Every single person who told the cops that were lying. Most of them were proven to not even have been able to witness it because other witnesses said, no, they were in the living room in the apartment with me across the street. There's no way they saw that. There were a handful of people who actually did see the shooting, and they did not corroborate that. The ballistics test from the coroner did not corroborate that. And body cams made a lot of sense right then, because if we had a body cam, all of this could have been avoided. All this whole Michael Brown hands up, don't shoot thing could have been put to bed. But when the Rams came out in their playoff games in the NFL and they're wearing the hands up, don't shoot, because they were still in St. Louis at the time. Remember they had hands up, don't shoot. I believe LeBron James was warming up before a game in a shirt that said hands up, don't shoot. It was a lie. It was a grift. But body cams started to be adopted widely. And this was supposed to be a tool to prove how awful and bloodthirsty and murderous and sloppy cops are, how just violent and gratuitously oppressive they are to our neighbors of color here in America. Well, now, the fast forward, body cams got a big boost under Joe Biden where they spent over $100 million to outfit as many law enforcement officers as they possibly could with body cams. And ever since this has happened, ever since we've had nearly universal adoption of body cams, your social media feed has been a steady stream of body cams that do not fit the narrative. Here's a guy who's talking on a lefty podcast. This is about as Team Blues you can get. Democracy Now! Now, just put aside the fact that he sounds like a weak little sissy and listen to what he's saying. This is the propaganda now on body cams. Body cams are now racist.
They said in the wake of Michael Brown, we'll market it to low information people in the public, to well-meaning liberal people. We'll market it as accountability and transparency. And so they totally shifted, and then they were able to get hundreds of millions of dollars toward their goal of outfitting every single cop in the United States with a mobile surveillance camera that the police control. They control when it's on, when it's off, what it captures, when something is captured, is released to the public. So if the police capture, let's say, an undocumented immigrant committing some crime, that's out on Fox News and the New York Post within hours. But if they capture the police doing something horrific, the public may never see that video. So body cameras are a mirage. And as I write in the propaganda book, and it's really critical to understand exactly how it happens, not only do they not reduce police violence, but they have been an essential propaganda tool in convincing so many well-meaning people across our society that the authorities care about police violence, that they want accountability, that they're doing something, right? And it distracts people from the core, important kinds of changes that we need, which is to reduce the size and power of these bureaucracies.
How Orwellian was that? That was the exact opposite of the truth. Body cams didn't allow us to have information to be used for propaganda. Body cams got around the propaganda. If we had body cams when Michael Brown got shot by the officer, we wouldn't have had this propaganda campaign that ended up with riots, would we? If we had the truth on day one, there wouldn't have been the level of racial animus that erupted afterwards. We would have been together, we would have agreed, and there would have been no riots. There would have been no big controversy. LeBron wouldn't have worn the shirt. The St. Louis Rams wouldn't have gone out there with their hands up, don't shoot, wearing the T-shirts either. The propaganda is when the media can spin a story, tell you something that's not true, have half the country believe it, and have billions of dollars of damage happen over and over and over, all for a political cause. That is the real propaganda. But it's so funny to me because these are the people, that little nerd was one of the ones probably screaming for body cams if you want to back it up a decade. But the second it demonstrates they were wrong about the narrative, now they're begging to get rid of them. Now crime cameras are racist as well. Did you hear about this one? Probably not. But the Seattle mayor was saying that she does not support the expansion of crime cameras because they perpetuate stereotypes. That's crazy. That's a real thing. That actually happened. Okay, well, what else you got, Parker? How about shot spotters? A couple of years ago, the mayor of Chicago wanted to take down the shot spotters. Why does he want to take down the gunshot spotters in Chicago? Because it keeps sending the cops to black and brown neighborhoods. You know, if you want more tools so you learn the truth about what's really going on, and you don't like the results of the truth, maybe you should change your worldview. Maybe the inanimate object that measures when it hears a gunshot couldn't possibly be racist. Maybe there's not something wrong with the gunshot spotters. Maybe there's not something wrong with crime cameras. Maybe there's not something wrong with body cameras. Maybe there's something wrong with you. Remember when the newspapers and TV news stations stopped identifying the race of black criminals? Why? Because it was killing the narrative. Remember when shoplifting laws were lifted because they were racist as well? Look, we're over-policing. This is why they're ended up in prison at 7 times the rate of their white counterparts, because the laws are racist. Now you're going to watch this attempted narrative shift in real time. It's so cool because now he has this new myth that he's trying to replace it with. That, yeah, the real dastardly propaganda is the videos they're not showing you. Yes, this is propaganda. Don't believe what you see with your own eyes. Believe me when I tell you it's propaganda. You know, at first, don't believe anyone that talks in that little sissy voice. Do they not have any testosterone on the left anymore? Is that outlawed too? Is that racist? But look, if you'd have pulled me over back when the Michael Brown thing happened, you would have probably heard a softer version of James. You know, I was under the impression, look, I still think most cops are good, but these police reports look pretty bad. I'm sure there's some bad apples in the group. We probably need to do the police cams and get to the bottom of this. Now, after I've seen just a decade, pretty much a day after day of all this body cam footage on all these different situations that turned out to be nothing like they were originally reported, I have come around more than full circle. I'm at the point now where I'm surprised there's not more police brutality. I can't believe how well behaved these guys are in these high stress situations where you're surrounded, where you're outnumbered, where you're being called terrible names, where you're definitely in danger. And some of these where you see the ones that are 100% justified, you still end up feeling sorry for the cops. Because now you've got to go home and go, try and have a normal day after you shot some person that attacked you? You don't just get to go home and pick up your kid from soccer practice when you're dealing with mortality like that, like the rest of us do, with just a cool, calm, collected, non-volcanic inside. But Black Lives Matter, democracy now, the woke left, begged you to get police body cams to stop police abuse. Now they want to remove body cams. And why? To stop police abuse. I'm almost embarrassed on behalf of them. Coming up next, the executive director of Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dozier, is going to talk about the economy. You're not hearing a whole bunch of news on it because it's doing great. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Let's get you all caught up on the economy here. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am on a mailing list that I've recommended on the James Show, and you haven't signed up for it, and it's starting to tick me off here. The Unleash Prosperity mailing list is something that was co-founded by Steve Moore and Art Laffer. If you know those names, you need to be on this list. It's fantastic. But now from Unleash Prosperity, Tim Dosher, welcome to the James Show. Usually when I have someone from Unleash Prosperity on, I'm asking about our economy. I want to ask about Iran's economy first. I mean, how long can they survive a blockade like this? Because throughout history, blockades have been devastating. Sure. Well, you guys over at Unleash Prosperity are part of an event, kind of, tonight. Art Laffer is having a debate with Professor Emmanuel Size about the proposed California billionaire wealth tax. How do I watch that? All right, and if you want to link to that, just send me an email or Facebook message. I'll figure it out and send you the link. The other thing that one of the reasons I like your email list so much, the newsletter, is because I feel like I am on Team Red in most instances, but then so much economic stuff comes up that I feel like this is where the Republicans really lose their way. And not that they're going in the wrong direction. It's just in economics, they're more like Democrat light than actual free market capitalists. And one of the big issues I'm having over the last few months, even around here, is data centers. How did we convince all of these people who vote Republican and are otherwise on the right side of all these issues to be so scared of data centers? Oh, you were here in Grapevine. Yeah, we were there too. Okay. All right. Hang on, Tim. Let me hit pause here because we're on a roll, but I got to step aside for a news break. We'll continue with Tim Dosher from Unleash Prosperity, talking about economics. Right now, it's ruining Iran and it's winning here in America. You'll hear more coming up on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. We're talking about the economy with my new best friend from Unleash Prosperity. We're continuing with Tim Dosher. Well, no, look, hey, there's not a whole lot of people that you and I can talk to that have the full understanding of economics and agree on all these issues. And I'm so happy to find someone like you because, Steve Moore and Art Laffer are kind of exceptions to the rule here, too, because what you and I talk about and what I see in the newsletter every day is not the mainstream of thought in the Democrat or Republican Party. And I just feel like we would be so much better off if one of the parties would adopt sensible economics. Well, I think another good example of that is Spirit Airlines just fell apart this week. And it was the last administration that stopped Spirit Airlines from merging with, it was JetBlue, wasn't it? I think it was JetBlue. So instead of letting these two companies merge together, oh, well, that wouldn't be good for competition. And if we had less airlines, then there would be bad for the consumers. And now we have less airlines anyway. Thanks a lot. Instead of letting them merge, and some of those people obviously would have been out of a job. Now all of them are out of a job. This administration didn't say, hey, why don't you merge with JetBlue instead of going out of business? They're like, let's talk about a bailout. Okay, no, I don't like the bailout. I'll just let them go out of business. What? So either we stop them from merging or we bail them out. We can't just let the free market take its course. I find that very frustrating. Right? I don't like it when he did it with Intel. I don't like it when anybody does it in any administration, and that's not a partisan thing. Well, I wish I had more time with you, but don't be a stranger, Tim. It was a good first time on the show, and if Steve Moore or Art Laffer's too busy to come on, I'd be happy to have you back anytime. I love it. Thank you very much. Tim Dosher, Unleash Prosperity. Again, we had mentioned the big debate that's going to be streaming tonight between Art Laffer and Professor something or other about a California billionaire wealth tax. I'll probably be using some of that audio on the James Show tomorrow, but if you want the link, let me know and I'll send it to you. Coming up next on the James Show, any teacher who participated in May Day rallies on Friday should be fired. I'll explain next on the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Any teacher who participated in May Day protests should lose their job. Every single one of them. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am so disappointed at what a pass communism gets in modern society. Joseph McCarthy was closer to where we should be. Not that I approve of everything he did, but the concern of communism should reach at least the level of our concern for fascism, which we all universally agree. It's a bad thing. Now, why is it a bad thing? Why do we all agree fascism is a bad thing? Well, because it's very authoritarian, which authoritarian in most people's mind is the opposite of freedom. It's very controlling of the economy. It puts a whole lot of control over the major industries, the means of production, into the hands of a small gilded elite. It has been shown to murder millions of their own citizens and undesirables and start costly, devastating wars. That's why we don't like fascism. Plus, overlaps real ugly with racism, sort of that anti-Jewish bent. Now, everything I just said about fascism applies to communism times 2. So why is fascism universally condemned in America, but communism isn't? Socialism isn't. It should be. Communism killed more people than the fascists. Communists killed more of their own citizens than the fascists. Communists have gone on more race crusades, and I mean that in a bad way, than fascists. Hitler killed more people. Stalin killed more people than Hitler. Mao killed more people than Hitler. So why does communism get a pass? It should bother you, though, that the protest that happened, May Day, was on Friday. Now, where we're at, I didn't see schools taking off. I didn't see any big rallies. I didn't see teachers canceling classes. But there were states where they did. And I find that to be just absolutely jaw on the floor bad. If you do not realize how deadly and awful and failed communism is as a philosophy of statecraft, you do not need to be anywhere in front of a classroom teaching anybody anything. You're not even qualified to be a math teacher if you're that bad. All teachers should be fired because either you believe in that and you have insanely bad judgment or an insanely bad grasp of history, or you're so easily duped, you're so dumb, you're so easily misled, you shouldn't be allowed around kids. Those are the only 2 options. There is no well-intended, good, intelligent person who's well-versed in history and knows what they're talking about who went to May Day protest with a good heart. But this also falls in context with things we talk about on the James Show about schools closing for light and transient causes. Oh, it's going to snow. Oh, it snowed 5 days ago. We need to close. Oh, it's going to rain really hard tomorrow. We need to close. Oh, there's some protests. We need to close. Oh, there's been a bomb threat. We need to close. No, stop closing school, especially for political purposes. And here's a guy named Jamal. He calls himself the Black Southerner on his online blog there. But he's the one who put this in my head. May Day teachers should be fired. I didn't know that there were school districts that closed for May, and now seeing these teachers, absolutely.
Every last teacher that participated in that May Day protest should be fired. Every last one of them. If you had a teacher who participated in a Nazi protest, they will be fired. If you had a teacher that participated in a Klan rally, they will be fired. If you had a teacher that participated in a black nationalist, they should be fired. Every last one of those May Day teachers need to be fired because communism and socialism should not be allowed to be taught here in America. And it cannot go hand in hand with the constitutional republic.
Right. And so just like if a teacher got caught with a swastika, there would be a huge outcry. Parents would be demanding he got fired. There would be so many emails that were sent to whoever the principal or superintendent or school board or trustee or something that they should be fired. We should treat communists the same way. And actually, we should treat them with more negative enthusiasm than we pursue fascists. And for the exact same reasons. They have all the exact same negative qualities about them, except it's just a little bit more hardcore. Because look, socialism is government ownership and control of the means of production. That's the big umbrella of socialism. And when you actually put that in statecraft in terms of history, that's called communism. Socialism is like, well, we would like for the government to have control or ownership, but we're still going to allow private property. We'll just have big social programs and nationalize industries. That's what socialism, air quotes, is now called in practice, even though it's not pure socialism. And fascism allows for private property too, private ownership of the means of production, but they still call for tight government regulation and control. They get to tell you who does business, what they're going to build, when they're going to build it, how big is it going to be. They're going to tell you who's going to buy life insurance. You don't have a choice. You have a mandate. They're going to tell the life insurance company who they have to cover, what conditions they have to cover, how much it's going to cost. This is what we have now for the mainstream of economic thought on both the Democrat and Republican Party, although it is more severe in the Democrat Party. They are economic fascists. Fascists like universal pre-K, just like Mamdani did. Fascists love public transportation, just like DART is. Fascists love gun control. Sound familiar? They love getting religion out of public schools. They love public schools. Sound familiar? We should not tolerate communism in our schools. We've done a real good job not tolerating racism in our schools. If some teacher says the N-word, he's going to get fired tomorrow, never to work in teaching again. In fact, we police that more than we police child predators. The hammer and sickle should be treated just as bad, should be treated worse than a swastika. And I don't think you can change my mind on that. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, the Cajun Navy. Racist? 60 Minutes seems to think so. I'll blow that out of the water. Pun intended. Next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey there, fellow Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. In my last story, if you're just joining us, I was talking about the teachers who had protested on May Day, the pro-communism rallies. All those teachers should be fired. Communism is not just an economic school of thought that I disagree with. It's literally the most deadly and dangerous school of thought man has ever devised. More people have died at the hands of communists, air quotes, helping people and making us all equal, than all the wars of religion combined. It's worse than fascism. The full-blown version of socialism, pure socialism, communism, is the worst idea any man has ever had. So to be a teacher, to be someone who is charged with pointing young minds in the right direction, for you to be either stupid or evil enough to support communism should be a deal breaker. I sure as hell don't want any of my teachers to be not just communist, so communist, you take a day off of work. You shut down schools. You go make a foam core sign and you go rally for communism? Boy, you're just advertising how dumb you are. Or evil. Take your pick. Because those are the two options. If there's the worst, most deadly, most bloodthirsty, most murderous ideology the world has ever known, worse than slavery, worse than the wars of religion, it doesn't get worse than communism. If you don't put your foot down on communism, I don't understand why you're putting your foot down on fascism. Communism's worse. So yeah, the hammer and sickle should be seen as just as bad. It should be worse than having a swastika. And I don't know how this isn't just a universally accepted truth. Mike in Frisco, you're next up on the James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
Well, yeah, so the only comment that I have on that is that Frisco ISD shut down all the schools, including their administration office, and that it all starts at the top. It starts at the administration building. It starts from the superintendent. They're the ones that should be fired, not the teachers. Now, if you want to say, the teachers that participated in the rallies, I'm okay with that too. But
that's what I'm saying. Not everyone who got a day off. Look, they can't go teach an empty classroom anyway. Yes, if you're an administrator who thought it would be a good idea to take off for May Day, absolutely, you should be fired too. And your name should be passed around like you said the N-word on Wheel of Fortune, to make an obscure South Park reference. But the fact that this is tolerated just blows my mind and should be unacceptable.
Well, yeah, it's unacceptable to me, but it all starts at the top, and you can't blame the teachers for what, other than the fact that they went to the rallies themselves. You can't blame the teachers for the schools. They didn't cause the schools to shut down.
Well, no, I'm not blaming them. If I wasn't specific enough, I thought I was. But yes, the teachers who went to the rally, the teachers who made the signs, the teachers who participated. If your school was closed and you stayed home, of course you shouldn't lose your job for that.
Right.
I didn't know they shut down the schools in Frisco on Friday. I'm just hearing this for the first time.
No, they did. They shut down. The ISD was shut down. The whole Frisco ISD was shut down.
You sure it wasn't some Hindu holiday, like the blue guy with six arms? Maybe it was his birthday or something.
Exactly. I don't know exactly what it was, but I know on May Day they were all shut down. That I'm 100% certain of. I live in Frisco, and I drive around here every day, and there was. Even the school zones were not operating, but even the administration building, there was no cars in the administration building at 10 o'clock in the morning.
You don't sound like you're from Frisco.
Born and raised in McKinney, Texas.
No. What part of Frisco are you from? The Outback? All right, go have a bloomin' onion, Mike in Frisco. Thank you very much. You just made my day worse. I didn't know Frisco was off on Friday. Not that I'm going to lose sleep over that, but there are just some garbage human beings in positions of power in our school districts that I'm tired of pretending like they're not. I love how we call out racism sometimes when it's legit. I love how the Me Too movement got rid of a bunch of people who were creeping on women and being predators. That's cool. I love how when people are outed as Nazis and fascists and whatever, they get run out of town and ostracized from polite society. Communism should be the same. Marxism should be the same. The fact that Mamdani came out and said that he used to be a communist, that should have been a deal breaker. It's so amazing that it's not. You know, the number one most deadly ideology in human history is communism, and it's only been around for about 120 years. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, 60 Minutes, going to call the Cajun Navy racist. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. How dare you go help someone during a natural disaster, you bigot? I'm James Parker. It's the James Show. Did you hear about this report on 60 Minutes this weekend? Where they were griping about how the Cajun Navy is the colloquial term, the catch-all term that we like to use for them. But these guys that go out in natural disasters and help people. Now, for the time that I lived down in New Orleans, I'm from here, but I had to travel around during my radio career, and I actually picked up Miss Parker in New Orleans and brought her back here. Hi, Miss Parker. But I got to see a lot of disasters up close and personal. Dude, I'm from Smith County. How many hurricanes have we experienced? Oh, yeah, that's right. 0. And also, it's not just the hurricanes. There's a lot of flooding that happens. The river can crest. There can be hard rains and storms. They have tornadoes. They have all the same bad weather we do. But also throw in hurricanes. And there was the BP oil spill. I was down there for that. And in all these disaster areas, you are left with the impression, or most Americans are left with the impression, that the government comes down and helps people out. FEMA is this agency that comes in, they swoop in during natural disasters, and they start putting things back together. But what really happens is there is a race to be the first to help people, and it's in the private sector. And I don't know who is going to get there. Sometimes it's usually the Salvation Army. A lot of times it's Samaritan's Purse is one of the ones that I feel like they didn't exist 20 years ago, but now they're something big that was at almost all the disasters I covered. And then in New Orleans, they have Catholic Charities, which I mean, I guess they have it up here, but I mean, I grew up here and I never heard about Catholic Charities doing anything around here. And I remember it kind of blew my mind because, like, I hadn't been there very long and I'd only experienced one hurricane. And when the BP oil spill happened, I went down to Grand Isle to do some reporting. And there were some people that were saying, I haven't been able to do my job since the spill happened. And if I didn't get some help, I was going to already be evicted. I'm like, oh, wow, you already got a FEMA check? And they're like, FEMA? No, I haven't even talked to FEMA. I got a check from Catholic Charities. Or there were some people that were lost everything. And, you know, if not for this meal tent over here, we wouldn't have anywhere to eat because all the restaurants in Grand Isle were gone too. It's like, oh, FEMA already set up a meal tent. And they're like, no, that was the Salvation Army. And so what happens is the Salvation Army shows up, Samaritan's Purse shows up, Catholic Charities shows up. A couple days later, the Red Cross will show up. 4 days later, FEMA will show up. They'll have a press conference, take all the credit. But you know who saves more people than FEMA? Neighbors. You know who feeds more people than FEMA? The private sector. Just regular people looking to their left, looking to their right, and helping out. And that's the way it should be. Did you know we didn't have a federal response for emergencies, including natural disasters, until less than 100 years ago? For most of American history, we didn't do that. In fact, one of the things that made Herbert Hoover so famous before his presidential run is there was a big bunch of floods along the Mississippi River, and he went out to coordinate the efforts. There was no money appropriated by Congress to the effort, but he went out there and his federal government, if you need anything that the federal government could help you with, you know, logistics or names or, you know, just mostly information, he went out there and he coordinated with all the different private sector charities and the cops and the military and the National Guard. He was sort of the go-between. And that made him famous enough that it kind of was the next rung in his political career. But now let's fast forward. We've had a lot of these disasters now. And this one group called the Cajun Navy just runs circles around the federal government when it comes to helping your neighbors in a natural disaster. They make the feds look like fools. And not on purpose. They're not doing this out of malice. It's just people get jealous. Hey, FEMA is supposed to take the credit, and all the credit is going to these goobers in a bass boat wearing camo that they just picked up at the academy. So we can't let that happen. No. If you're a statist, you want government to take the credit. You want the authorities to be the ones who are well loved, not the evil Christians, not the Baptists, not the Protestants, not the Catholics. You don't want something nice being said about them. Cajun Navy, we're trying to convince people that the white people who live out in the hinterlands and drive around in camouflage boats are evil, bloodthirsty, racist monsters. We can't have the rest of the world showing what good-hearted, generous people they are, how willing they are to sacrifice for their neighbors. So 60 Minutes ran a hit piece on volunteering to help your neighbor in a disaster. Let me play a couple pieces from this piece of work.
Our story tonight is about what happens after these natural disasters. A pattern has emerged in recent years in which militias, conspiracists, and white supremacists show up to hard-hit communities, as they did last week in Texas, offering help. But they've been called disaster tourists who are out to sow doubt in government, soften their own image, and gain followers.
You have never heard them be called disaster tourists. They are trying to craft a narrative because you know what they really are? They're heroes is what they are. Shame on you, Leslie Stahl, for disincentivizing, for not glorifying helping your fellow man. You're supposed to be the party of empathy. I thought Team Red was all selfish and didn't have any empathy, and I vote for Democrats because I care about my fellow man. And then you make fun of people who care about their fellow man? You call them white supremacists and racists and Nazis? Oh, great. Thanks. Thanks a lot. Yeah, go out and help your fellow man, and Leslie Stahl will call you the worst names we have for people. But they also talk like a militia is a bad word. Like this country didn't get its independence from militias. Like militias aren't spoken about in the Constitution. And not only are they some sort of outside, disparate, non-American thing, they are the essentially American thing. And listen to how they talk about them.
Did some of these outsiders launch their own rescue operations?
We had some folks wanting to act as a militia coming in to take over to, in their mind, bring some sort of self-deployed law and order to the area.
With weapons?
Yes, ma'am.
Weapons?
So that's like taking your time from the real rescue to deal with them?
It is. It is.
Yeah. They're just taking up the authorities' time because there's a bunch of guys out there wanting to be militias with weapons. Weapons are not scary. Militias are not scary. You know what's scary? Just letting people drown in a flood and talking people out of going to save them. And what kind of just... Let me review the question at the beginning of the soundbite again. Who would even ask such an awful question?
Did some of these outsiders launch their own rescue operations?
Did some of these outsiders launch their own rescue operations? And she's not saying that as like, wow, what a bunch of brave, nice guys. What a bunch of heroes. She's like, can you believe these people are rescuing the folks around them? Listen, this is what men do, Leslie. We go rescue people, and we don't have to have a badge on to do it. We don't have to have training. We don't have to have a uniform. It's just inherent with the male condition. We all have the instinct to take care of people around us. Me first, then my family, then my neighbors, and then the people on the next block, and then maybe if things are bad enough, the people in the next state. How many people have you saved? Oh, yeah, they're taking up so much of the authorities' time. No, I think they're giving the authorities much more time and man hours than they're costing them. Because you know what? Maybe they did have a couple of guys that they had to go have a chat with from the militia or whatever, scary or some bad actors in there. But I'm sure that was offset by the Cajun Navy saving 17,000 people during Hurricane Harvey. Coming up next, we're going to continue with this 60 Minutes piece where they go so in depth and they start naming off thought leaders and organizations and groups and locations and logos. It's almost like they're hyping up these white supremacist groups. It's almost like what the Southern Poverty Law Center has been doing for the last decade or so in propping up these white supremacist groups, so the general public thinks that that's actually a big part of our society when it's about as big as a frog hair. More on the desecration of people volunteering to help their neighbors during natural disasters coming up next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Are you in pain right now? Do you have some Tylenol or ibuprofen, or maybe it's Aleve in the console of your car right now? Because that's how often you experience pain. What would it be worth to you if you never had to worry about that pain again? James Parker here for QC Kinetics. It might not be possible for you. I don't want to get you all hyped up. I don't want to get you too excited here. But for about 70% of the people who go through the doors at QC Kinetics, they find solutions to their pain problems with some of the space age technologies and treatments that they have there. And it's not just one thing. They do a whole lot of different approaches and angles at this. but all of them have no surgery, no downtime, no hospital stays. You don't even have to take your clothes off and put on one of those embarrassing gowns. There's no drugs. And the best part is you don't have to miss work, because who can afford to miss work? So look, go find out. The consultation's free. It just starts with you making a phone call. 972-972-8610. 972-972-8610. Hey, don't listen to 60 Minutes. It's fine if you rescue people in a natural disaster. It doesn't make you a bad person. I'm James Parker. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. Saying, it's a shame I have to say that. But Leslie Stahl was going through a package over here on 60 Minutes this weekend. And they were pointing out some of the dastardly things that they found in the rescue operations. And remember, this is what the pro-state people are pushing. They don't want you to be rescued by your neighbor. They want you to be rescued by government. And government has taken the place of religion. I think that's what this illustrates beautifully. Because in all of those other rescue efforts that I mentioned and all the other private sector, non-government disaster relief agencies, what did they all have in common? Catholic Charities, Samaritan's Purse, Salvation Army. That's right, they're all Christian. So we don't want the Christians getting the credit. We want government getting the credit. We're not driven to go help our neighbors by our faith or our love of Christ or because that's what our religion has pointed us to do. No, they don't see that. They don't have your religion. They believe in the state. So they go rescue people. Why? Well, because we have a whole government bureaucracy and that's their job. And we have forcibly taken money from people from all over the country involuntarily, and we'll spend it however we see fit when it comes to a natural disaster. But do you ever notice how Leslie Stahl never actually tells you any of the real good things that they do? Did she tell you how many people the Cajun Navy has saved? Did they tell you how many people water rescues they did? Did she tell you that they're doing this all at their own expense? They're paying for all their own gas. They're using their own boats. They're taking off of work. They're buying their own water, their own food, their own lodging, their own supplies. This is costing all these guys are being selfless to the tunes of thousands and thousands of dollars at the expense of not just themselves, their family, their summer. This could have been the week they were taking vacation. This could have been the week that they were getting a big contract at work. This could have been the week that they were supposed to be schmoozing the new client that was going to be paying them for years to come. But these people put everything aside and they sacrifice. And she doesn't like it because then the government doesn't get credit. Yes, you can come out and help, but you have to coordinate with the local authorities. Government has to be in charge. These people's religion is government. Do you get it now? It's hard to find a better story. But for all these people who don't believe in government, what are they doing? They are out there rescuing people based on their religion. Government is their religion. Do you get that now? So let's continue with Leslie Stahl here, where about halfway through the story on 60 Minutes, they start turning into almost a promotional piece for all the disparate white supremacist Nazi groups in America. And it feels like what the Southern Poverty Law Center was doing. There wasn't enough racism in America, so they had to generate it. For the handful of few racists that were disappearing over the horizon, they have to pump them up. They have to give them resources. They have to give them promotion. They have to give them airtime. Southern Poverty Law Center was giving them millions of dollars. But Leslie Stahl is giving them promotion on 60 Minutes. 60 blankety blank minutes. Where if you were covering the people who volunteered in a natural disaster, you could have walked away and said, wow, what a great influence Christianity has been on these people. What a bunch of good, selfless, self-sacrificing people who are going to get no reward, no credit, no trophy, not even a participation trophy. You could have put some of them on 60 Minutes, but no, you didn't do that. You went and found the fleeting, exceptional minority, and you highlighted that like it was the main story. Just shame on you. Is this reporting or is this hyping?
Robert Rundo co-founded Active Club in 2020 as a place for disgruntled young white men to work out together while sharing their ideology. With nearly 90 chapters, it's been described by watchdogs as one of the country's fastest-growing white supremacist networks that are anti-Semitic, anti-immigrant, and anti-democracy.
By the way, she interviews one of these guys, asks him if he's a white supremacist, and he says no. but she just described them as white supremacists. And another one, she's hyping the Patriot Front. The Patriot Front was this group that no one had ever heard of, and then all of a sudden they just show up one day, and there's like 60 guys, and they're all wearing matching khakis and matching gray polos, and they all have pretty much a uniform on. They all have their faces covered. They all have a hat on. They're flying the American flag, and none of them were fat. They were all in decent shape, so we thought it was a bunch of feds at first. I'm not sure if it is anymore. But here she is highlighting them. Have you ever actually met someone who's in the Patriot Front, or have you only seen it highlighted by the Southern Poverty Law Center and 60 Minutes?
Many of these outside groups want to build, as one of their posts states, a pro-white parallel system. One of the more prominent white supremacist groups that showed up in North Carolina was Patriot Front. They cut down trees and handed out bread.
Are you sure just one loaf?
But Freddie Cruz from the Western State Center, a hate group watchdog, says these white nationalists go to disasters primarily to build a following.
Yeah, let's ask the hate group watchdogs. They have a great record of honesty. They have no incentive to overhype the level of racist and white supremacy in America. Oh, no. Let's go talk to them. Did she talk to someone who's neutral? Did she talk to someone who's on Team Red, but not one of the evil white supremacist groups? Did she talk to anyone from Samaritan's Purse or Salvation Army? No, it was just a hit job to make people suspicious of white rural America, Christians, and people who help out during natural disasters. How damn evil was that? Coming up next, James Tallarico tells you what he really stands for. You'll hear that audio on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. All right, I got a couple of fun pieces of audio from James Tallarico and maybe Pete Buttigieg if we can get into it. I mean, before I play the Tallarico audio, Pete Buttigieg. Are the writers in The Matrix getting lazy? That was one of the signs that where I felt like we're not really living, experiencing this, subjectively. We're all just in some pod, in some power plant somewhere, sitting in a pod full of liquid, some goo, and we're plugged into a computer, and this isn't real. Because there's no way you can tell me the prominent gay rights figurehead in the Democrat Party that was a candidate in their primaries for president last time around. The gay fella's name is Peter, which is a euphemism for you know what. And then his last name is Buttigieg. Just wanted to revisit that. Hadn't felt that suspicious about our naming conventions ever since the Anthony Weiner scandal. Remember, he got in trouble for hitting on underage girls, sending naughty pictures from his laptop or whatever. And not only is his last name Weiner, his wife's name is Humma. I was like, we're in the Matrix, aren't we? All right, now that we got that to the side there. A few people sent me this clip, including my boss, Bruce, so now I kind of have to play it here. James Tallarico is telling you what he really stands for. Oh, by the way, for those of you who are new to the show, James Tallarico, he's running for Senate from Texas in the next election here.
News update, David Van Camp. This is James Tallarico.
Yeah, I should say, we pulled this from Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. The show on right before James.
News update, David Van Camp. This is James Tallarico.
Yes, he's the Democrat running for Senate in Texas. He gave a speech at Paul Quinn College and really tapped into the victimhood narrative while he was fishing for votes.
Okay.
You've seen a pandemic and an insurrection.
What?
Natural disasters and artificial intelligence.
An insurrection? When did that happen?
I don't know.
An insurrection without guns?
Yes.
Oh, got it.
Mass shootings and mass deportations. All piped through your screen into your souls. You have scrolled through more suffering, more division, more chaos than any generation in human history.
What? World War I, you had 17-year-olds fighting.
Yes. You weren't scrolling through suffering, though, sir.
You were in it.
I know, but...
You ever read about the human suffering there?
Of course.
It's brutal.
Yes. Yeah.
World War II? But by seeing it on your screen, you've had it the worst.
Yeah, they're importing it to you.
Give me a break.
Dude, that is such a lie because the reality is so different. The reality is, of all the 17-year-olds right now, there is not any generation in all of human history going back to the Tyrannosaurus Rex where a 17-year-old hasn't had an easier go of it. In fact, for most of human history, up until about, 50 years ago, making it to 17 was a dicey proposition. Making it to 17 healthy before you lost a leg to an alligator or lost you were crippled from polio or you got hit with a spear from the tribe that's invading from the next woods over or no one has had more of a luxurious, cushy, easy, soft life than 17-year-olds now. And you're telling them the opposite? This is the worst anyone's ever had it. Why are you lying to 17-year-olds? How evil are you to lie to kids like that? And what's the point? To make them scared? Make them scared to walk outside? The world's all dangerous. Everybody's coming after you. What the heck is wrong with you people? Dave in Southlake. You're on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Dave.
Yeah. Who am I speaking with?
James Parker.
Oh, so I'm on the air now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, great. Hey, I have a house in St. James City, Florida that went through Hurricane Ian in 2022, and the FEMA was totally useless, and the Cajun Navy, they were going around town helping people, and because we had like 2.5 feet of water in our house, salt water, and they helped carry everything out to the street for the trash, and they were really good, and they had a setup at I think it was the VFW Hall or somebody down the street, and they were down there for days helping everybody.
Yeah, one thing I learned is that the the first people that are going to help you are the people that live next door and across the street. Other than that, other neighbors are going to end up showing from the next street over. But the last people to show up to help is FEMA. And being adjacent to so many disasters for the decade or so that I lived in New Orleans, I came out of there. When I came back to Texas, I'm like, FEMA needs to be abolished. FEMA does absolutely, and I don't want to say they do absolutely nothing, but like the norm is there's a disaster, everyone gets and rescues everyone else, and then FEMA shows up, and 2 weeks later they start handing out prepaid debit cards worth $200 to make up for the food that you lost in your fridge because the power went out. And so then people have to go stand in like a 6-hour-long line 2 weeks after the storm happened. It's a total waste, and it's even worse than you think. And now we got 60 minutes slagging the people that are actually doing the rescuing. It's a criminal injustice, but aren't we kind of used to that? Stick around. Mark Levin's coming up next. I'm James Parker. This has been The James Show. Go check out my podcast. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.